Okay, we're good to go then.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to start with a quick introduction from Commissioner Parker Sloan before we go ahead and get going.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us for this important conversation. As you may know, equity is not just one of our values in our strategic plan, but it's also one of our foundational focus areas as a county. As a Buncombe County Commission, we recognize the need to advance equity in everything that we do. And as such, we have directed our staff to move forward to make progress in the area of equity and collect public input. And to that end, our county manager, Avril Pinder, formed an internal equity and inclusion work group to develop our racial equity action plan. And now we're bringing that plan to the public for feedback. We know that inequities exist in many ways, but for us and based on the data, that shows deep disparities with regards to race. And it was important that we consciously and intentionally start with race. And I just wanted to mention, you know, what stood out to me when I read through the draft plan as a role and responsibility for local government, for county government. It's just my opinion. It's that quality of life section. It's that the section about improving housing outcomes for people and enhancing equitable economic drivers. So improving affordable housing, access to housing, supporting workforce development, expanding Black homeownership and Black business ownership. Those are the kinds of things that stood out to me the most and will be rolling around in the back of my mind as this process moves forward. And so, again, I thank you for being here, and I hope that you'll lean in and help make this plan as strong as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Haley Madvis, and I'm a planner here at Buncombe County. Today, we are here to give a brief overview of the draft Racial Equity Action Plan and to receive some community input. We will begin with a slide presentation. There will be time for discussion and questions at the end of the presentation. We invite questions to be added to the chat, and we will answer questions at the end. After the session, we will send a link for everyone to submit their feedback. If anyone needs a copy of the plan, we can put a link in the chat. Now I will introduce my co-presenters and working group team members, Jacqueline Brannon and Kristen Wilson. Jacqueline will be taking over the next portion of this presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Buncombe 2025 is a strategic plan that will guide county operations and set a course of action for moving forward and drive future policy and budget decisions. During the strategic plan process, the commissioners, staff, and community members felt that it was imperative that we address equity as an organizational value and a foundational area. Therefore, equity was immediately addressed within the plan. So why are we starting with racial equity? In a few minutes, we will talk about our county strategic plan, which calls out racial equity as the starting place. The idea is that by supporting the people who are the furthest behind, we create a rising tide where everyone does better. Our equity and inclusion work group stands to challenge many forms of oppression, including racism, sexism, heterocism, ableism, and many others. We recognize that all oppressions are perpetuated by the interplay of institutions, individuals, and culture operating amidst the weight of history. We are prioritizing an anti-racist strategy in order to create an equitable society for all. This prioritization is not based on the intent to create a ranking of oppressions or the belief that racism is worse than other forms of oppression. However, for an equitable Buncombe County to come into being, we need to challenge the way racism is used as a divisive issue, keeping communities from coming together to organize for change. Our Equity and Inclusion Work Group was formed in February 2020 to build a sustainable culture of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The goal is to organize and implement a county-wide racial equity action plan. We're identifying challenges to racial and social equity and inclusion and brainstorming innovative ways to overcome these hurdles within our society and organization. We will begin with racial equity and build on that as we move into other forms of equity. This photo was taken before the pandemic. This is a photo of our equity team. Since this photo was taken, we have added more members, and in the future, you will see an updated list who is currently a part of the equity plan. Right now, here's a list of our equity work group, and those individuals are listed on the left, whereas we also have team leads and support staff, and they're listed on the right side. The initial team was formed using an application process. Members have a staggered 2-year term limit. Right now, half the current members will their term will end December 31st, 2021, and the other members' terms will end December 31st, 2022. During this process, we will have a nomination or application process to fill seats as they open up. This is our very first picture pre-COVID that we had an opportunity to work together. And from there, we had to move into a virtual space. Now, before we jump into the work, that we want to make sure we are speaking the same language. Our community partners have repeatedly voiced the importance of advancing equity, which is distinctly different from equality. In plain language, equity means ensuring that everyone has a fair and just opportunity for well-being. As shown in this image, providing equal supports to all community members does not actually get you a fair outcome or provide the lift needed for all community members to get the support they need. And now I would like to present my co-facilitator, Kristen.
Kristen, you're muted.
Thank you. So here we are introducing the concept of racial equity. How do we achieve equity? By intentionally addressing the challenges of institutional racism, which specifically refers to the ways in which institutional policies and practices create different outcomes for different racial groups. The institutional policies may never mention any racial group, but their effect is to create advantages for whites and oppression and disadvantage for people from groups classified as people of color. We will also address class oppression and gender discrimination and exploitation. We will take a look at a few areas at the community level here locally where the data show disparities for people who are Black, starting with housing. As you can see, 3.5% of homeowners occupied in Buncombe County belonging to African Americans, and 8.7% of rental properties are occupied by African Americans. Another area we see local disparities is in criminal justice data. The impact of jail use takes especially heavy toll on people of color. Despite making up 6.4% of the local population, African Americans make up 26% of the jail population on average. We also see disparities in outcomes when looking at local data related to infant mortality. 2018 data showed Black babies in Buncombe County were 4 times more likely to die before their first birthday than white babies. People of color are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, including African Americans and people of Latino and Hispanic identity. Now we're going to pass it back to Haley.
Thank you, Kristen. So wrapping up why equity is important. Last summer, our Board of Commissioners passed a resolution declaring racism a public health and public safety crisis. Here's a quote from the chair of the Health and Human Services Board that speaks to structural and systemic racism. This widespread system of oppression is built through policies and practices that have created inequities in health, education, housing, employment, criminal justice, and our other public institutions. In order to create a truly equitable community, we must dismantle these racist systems as intentionally as they were built, and even more so. So why do we need an equity plan? We have created an equity action plan to offer guidance and education to county staff and elected officials, to help recognize and remove systemic barriers, to increase equity in the community and within our organization. The action plan will give us concrete, actionable items and help us track our progress. For those that are interested in further research, Portland, Oregon has a good example of an equity plan. How was the plan developed? The plan was developed by us coming together as a group. We laid out our vision for the work group and used tools and resources from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, otherwise known as GARE. We also benefited from internal facilitation by Buncombe County Performance Management and external facilitation from consultant Cortina Janelle. We reviewed sample plans from other jurisdictions, all while gathering input from local subject matter experts. How is the plan organized? We used the Buncombe County Strategic Plan as a starting point. We formed community goals which focused outwards on Buncombe County as a community. And we formed foundational goals which focus inwards on Buncombe County as an organization. We coordinated the plan with the departmental business plans. Each goal is tied to initiatives and actions. This way we can ensure there are pathways for goals to be achieved. So here's a snapshot of the goals from the plan. You can see that the goals are arranged like the county's strategic plan. I'll read the community goals. Create pathways to ensure engagement in racial equity strategies and improve quality of life. Provide racial equity education and communication to the community. Improving quality of life outcomes through racial equity initiatives. Foundational goals. Cultivate a thriving workforce within Buncombe County that ensures racial equity. Institute organizational policies and processes to ensure equity and accountability. Establish Buncombe County as an equity inclusion model. So here is an overview of the community level initiatives. For more detail about how we plan to enact each item, please refer to the draft plan. I won't read this slide, but it has all of the goals from the community aspect. And then underneath are those initiatives that will lead us to actions. And then here is the overview of the foundational level initiatives. Again, for more detail about how we plan to enact each item, please refer to the draft plan. And the same sort of setup, we have the goals, initiatives underneath that will lead to actions in achieving our goals. So we are currently on track with our timeline. Here we are in April conducting community input sessions. We anticipate we could have an approved plan and be ready to implement by July 2021 at the start of our new fiscal year. Okay, so now is the time for some community feedback. We will post this link in the chat. This is the official way to submit your thoughts. You can take your time to do this, but responses are due by the end of this month, April 30th by 5 p.m. We will also be opening up the floor now for discussion, questions, and feedback. Please make sure to submit your comments on Facebook or in the Zoom Q&A. We have limited time today, but if we cannot get to them, we will have your questions and we will get back to them too. Kristen and Jacqueline will also be available to answer questions now as well. If community members would like to answer any of these questions we're about to pose at this time, they can raise their hand or post your answers in the Q&A. We will begin with the first question. And this is posed to the community. What do you like about the plan?
We have one attendee raising their hand.
Okay.
This is Grant Millen. Did you want me to talk?
Yeah, do you have an answer for the first question? Or you can answer the other question on how to make the plan better or offer other feedback if you'd like.
Well, I'm going to tell you that that I'm just watching the City of Asheville approach to equity inclusion. They left out persons with disabilities. And as a veteran, leaving out disabled veterans, leaving out disabled children, leaving out elderly disabled in Asheville and Buncombe County, it isn't gonna, you can't do that forever. I've gone through the GARE approach, and I read one statement of theirs that says that we just all said, we got to do the races, we got to do get to the anti-racism future first, and then other constituencies can be heard. We just got through talking about LGBT folks with Buncombe County commissioners and their non-discrimination plan. And I could hear people really talking about a very backwards way of talking about LGBTQ folks. And it isn't uniform about how it all works, because there's conservative religious African Americans who have a different approach about LGBTQ folks. So equity and inclusion is good. It just needs to be universal for all Americans. And I want there to be the anti-racism future, but it fits in with the rest of what America is about. And I look forward to seeing what you all come up with. But I just wanted to say, I'm going to share some detailed comments that I'm writing up as you all have been talking. So leaving out persons with disabilities, you can get into a equal protection clause lawsuit. Both City of Asheville and Buncombe County government could be sued for not including persons with disabilities. And all of this, there's going to be money behind this. There's going to be services. There's going to be great things happening on just the racial front. But if you leave out persons with disabilities, you get a nice juicy lawsuit because you didn't serve them. You didn't help their employment situations. You didn't help their housing situations. So I'm just telling you, the future, it needs to be anti-racist, but it needs to also include persons with disabilities. And I think LGBTQ folks don't get served when you just say race only always until the anti-racism future is perfected. I'm not sure. But
Grant.
I'm gonna let you guys go, because I got to tell you, I had some bad experiences already by bringing up the persons with disabilities. Rob, with racial justice.
Grant, hi. My name is Jacqueline. So we definitely hear what you are saying. It's just that with this particular plan, we are just starting with addressing racism. It is not the end all. We will be addressing other things, because part of the process with our county, we want to focus on inclusion, and that is with everyone. You know, as a parent of a disabled adult young man, I'm definitely going to be working with the process to ensure that individuals with disabilities are not excluded. So I do want to ensure you that starting with racism is just the beginning, but we will be addressing other things as well. So we appreciate your concerns. We hear what you're saying to us, and we are going to diligently work
All right, well,
to address those concerns.
I will see the evidence, because I'm one of the only people looking for the evidence, because our advocacy for PWDs, persons with disabilities, is extremely weak. It's not my job. I don't have a nonprofit that's working with PWDs, but when it's proportional, high impact, and relevant for PWDs with Buncombe County government and City of Asheville, you'll be setting the bar higher for all municipalities and for the federal government and the state of North Carolina. But
thank you very much.
It's a problem.
We have another attendee who has a question. This person, Brandon, you may speak. You may.
Hello. Thank you for calling on me. This is about a third meeting where the person that spoke before me has come on in the racial equity situation, talking about PWDs. I need this to be addressed, like it's wasting time. This is called the Racial Equity Action Plan. That's what it's for. It's for racial issues. No one's excluding anyone. It's just focusing on race. Let that go. Do not call out other people who are not a part of the thing right now and tell us about your bad experiences. That's not what we're here for. Do not come on threatening the group, talking about how there's a lawsuit waiting. This is 2021. There's a lawsuit waiting for everything. But you don't go to Taco Bell and order a hamburger. So don't come to a racial equity action plan meeting talking about other subjects until the first one is taken care of. Please stop doing that, sir, so we can make some progress.
Do you have a question, Brandon?
That's all. That's it.
Okay. We have a question in the Q&A. Elaine wants to know if we are asking community members to serve on committees.
I think at this time, we're not at that place at this time. The first step is to really get your feedback through the survey, and the link is in the chat if you're able to see that. We really encourage folks to fill out that survey to give your direct input at this first step.
Just a reminder to all of our attendees, we are here for a safe space and a brave space, and we're committed to respectful dialogue. And we ask that our attendees honor that commitment. We're waiting to see if we have any additional questions. It looks like Priscilla has her hand raised. Priscilla, you may unmute yourself.
Good evening. I don't actually have a question, but I just wanted to say that I'm happy to see this committee established, and I'm looking forward to the outcome. I am a native of Asheville, North Carolina, and I was able to witness the implementation of urban renewal. And, you know, I saw the loss of home ownership as well as Black-owned businesses, thriving Black-owned businesses. And so I'm excited about what you have laid out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the final outcome would be. And I'm just hoping that it's not just about talk, but there's action behind it. So I wish you the best, and I'll be watching you. Thank you.
We have a comment in the chat from Nancy Ramsey, who has asked that we please review our process for gathering the priorities that appear here and any consultation with, okay. Max, can you read the whole chat? I'm sorry,
Sure. Nancy said to all panelists, please review your process for gathering their priorities that appear here and any consultation with Black citizens. And then Kyle to panelists said, I appreciate and wholeheartedly applaud looking at racial equity first. My question is, how do you educate the people of Buncombe County that racial equity is a necessary first step? I am a white male and know so many that don't see the need. So an education plan is necessary for momentum to be successful. So I'll repeat the question in there. How do you educate the people of Buncombe County about the necessity of this type of plan?
Jacqueline, do you have thoughts on that?
And we have a attendee, Zoe, who would like to provide an answer also. She's a member of the Health and Human Services team. And on our racial and equity group. So you can unmute yourself now.
Hi.
Zoe, I think you might be having a connection issue.
Hello.
There we go. Thank you, Zoe.
Sorry to scare anyone. Sometimes there's an audio glitch. I do want to answer this, you know, seemed to be a technical error, pardon. I'm offering this from a humble place as obviously a staffer, but as someone who has called Asheville home since the early 80s. And one thing that I can say in terms of who is it to educate? It's not something that we, our Buncombe County staff team of 2,500 or so can hold. Really, the education is about our Buncombe County community residents being committed to having a culture of equity and inclusion. And as we've also passionately heard one of our neighbors talk about ableism and the pain that it causes people being able to experience a full life, that same and the way that it also manifests in other isms is something that is only able to be transcended and for us to be in a transformational place when we all assume that responsibility. And so part of that teaching is talking to your friends, talking to your neighbors. Everything that we've seen around COVID and what we've been able to do, a lot of the change agents in people's minds about the seriousness, about the behaviors that we needed to be engaged in, and about how we're really going to be able to get to where we are today has often come from not necessarily the experts, and in this instance, it may be Buncombe County staff, but about those trusted voices in your everyday. For all those people who are on this call today, I think that we are here to really pass that baton on to you. We're appealing to you all to, in all of your networks and all of your spheres of influence, to start that conversation. One of the things that we are committed to doing is to support everyone in having those conversations, whether it's in your kitchen, whether it's in the driveway with your loved one, or possibly it's in your place of worship or in your PTA or in your bridge club, wherever you get those times to be in that safe and brave space to have those conversations. There's lots of tools, so it is not something that's alien to us in that these are tough. You may lose friends. You may possibly be at a risk of maybe not getting invitations to those barbecues or cocktail parties once we open up fully, but it's worth it. So what we are doing isn't new. Every few, generations, our community, our country, and even our county makes a reset, and that's that. So we're asking for you all to join us in meeting that moment and be prepared to roll your sleeves up. And we continue to be in uncomfortable spaces and doing this work. I know I have been, and I hear it from my colleagues. And so with that, know that we are here to provide technical assistance to help you all in helping us realize a culture of equity and inclusion in Buncombe County.
And just a follow up, Kyle, it's in the racial equity action plan as one of our goals to create authentic, honest, transparent community engagement around racial equity, specifically by hosting trainings for community and stakeholders. So that is included in our plan as well.
We want to remind all attendees that even if we don't get to your questions or comments, that we do have record of them. And we do have an attendee with his hand up, Roy Harris. Roy, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Roy Harris, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. For me, it's racial equity and those throwing those two words around, my head is swimming now. I'm an African American that lives in this, what I call the South Side of Asheville, and that is a South Side neighborhood. And one of the questions I've started to ask myself the last year or so is, if I was to walk my neighborhood, where would I see racial equity, economic equity from the county? What kind of things do I need to look for? What kind of things do I need to put my hands on? And then it's like, where does my tax money go from the county? I sort of understood it from the city, but now I am saying, wait a minute, I pay more to the county than I pay to the city. So where do I find those kinds of things? And also part of the racial equity, I'm learning that Asheville African American population is dwindling. So that must mean that Buncombe County African American population is increasing. And then I wonder, will the same services go with the ones that have to move out of the city because they can't afford it and move out into the county? So I'm just looking at it and just to start to look at it, and I'm trying to figure out, well, how does Buncombe County fit into, I've always thought of Asheville, but now I am starting to think, Buncombe County, what's Buncombe County? Who are they? What are they all about? Where can I see their work at? Where can I feel it, touch it, smell it, taste it, or even see it? And so that's my general comment until I get to know more about this whole racial equity thing in the county. Thank you.
So with that, we would encourage you to take a look at page 8 in the Racial Equity Action Plan. You'll find there the goals for improving the quality of life outcomes through racial equity initiatives, with some direct accountability and performance measures that include housing, BIPOC ownership, and renewable energy for our BIPOC community. So specifically, page 8 is going to be a great resource for you in that area. And then if there are pieces that are missing from there, we'd love to hear that through our survey of how we can help make that more robust. Looks like Zoe has a hand raised. Zoe?
Yes, so I just wanted to provide some context in why we shared some really key important data, some data points in the start of this discussion. We shared about housing and rental ownership. We shared about birth outcomes, and then also involvement with justice. All of those are major opportunities, or about how long are you going, obviously length in life, which is an important health indicator. And we've shared an important indicator about wealth, whether for the individual or if it is generational. So Roy, to answer your question in what would it look like, these are important opportunities that we have. So in anything, if we see a disparity, all things being equal, as in infant mortality, if two moms have equal access to care, have similar behaviors, and if they are Black and one is white, we see these disparate outcomes in their health and in their baby's health. It leads us to ask questions. The same thing could happen in terms of neighbors who are in the same apartment building. Their dollars are going to possibly not go far. So what would it look like is when it's no longer predictive based on race, that there is going to be a difference when all things are equal in the outcomes or the experience or the access for whatever quality of life or opportunity measure we're looking at. I hope that that's a helpful start, and a way to approach it is, if you have a question, regardless of what measure it is, if it's length in life, it is literacy, is it education outcomes, it all depends. When we lift the hood up on it, if the outcomes are different, based particularly on race, then what would it look like is when there is no longer that disparity.
We have about just under 20 minutes left. So if anyone else has a question, please feel free to raise your hand or put that in the chat, the Q&A. Okay, well, Elaine put a question in the chat a few minutes ago.
Yeah, It was on whether community members were able to serve, and Kristen said not yet.
Great. Well, with that, who wants to close us out and make the last ask for going to that survey?
This is just a reminder that you can find the survey in the chat. It's a link. You have until the end of this month to submit your responses. That's April 30th at 5 p.m. Thank you for everyone for joining and for all your thoughtful questions. Have a good evening.
And just one quick technical note, we were not able to put this on Facebook Live today due to a Facebook error, but I am recording them and it will be in English and in Spanish on Facebook after the fact. Feel free to let your friends and family members and community members know. Place any comments you like to those videos on Facebook and we will add them to our notes.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.